A very good morning to you. You are watching Newsline this morning, and we are going to have an international program, if I may put it that way. We are going to cross over today to Malaysia, because Malaysia has seen Mr. Mahathir Mohamad, 92 years of age, becoming the Prime Minister of the country after being in power for from until 2003 as the Prime Minister. Mahathir Mohamad crossed over to the opposition in 2018 and has now become the Prime Minister of the country. Now, we also know that during Mr. Mahathir Mohamad's tenure as Prime Minister, Malaysia experienced a period of rapid modernization and economic growth, and his government initiated a series of bold infrastructure projects. And like all politicians across the world, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad is also embroiled in a bit of controversy, and we are going to talk about all of that in a bit. We are going to keep you updated of what's happening in Malaysia, because it is important to us as a country to know what is happening around us. Before we go there, let me take your attention to the newspapers of the day. A lot of things happened in Sri Lanka yesterday as well. We saw the Inter-University Students Federation conducted a protest around Colombo, around the Lipton Circus in Colombo, and the police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse the protesters. And their main argument, or their charge, was that they needed a sustainable, permanent solution to the CITEM issue in the country. Importantly, another piece of legislation was passed in Parliament yesterday. That was the Judicature Amendment Bill that was brought by the government headed by the Justice Minister Thalathathu Korala. The objective of this particular bill is to make sure that cases pertaining to bribery and corruption and so on are held in an expedited manner. They are held fast, and the decisions are given with a special trial at bar. Another important message from Parliament was that the Speaker announced yesterday that the National Audit Bill is in accordance with the constitution of the country, an information that he received from the Supreme Court. Initially, there was a little jumble to say that the Speaker had said that it was not in accordance, but the Speaker himself corrected it thereafter. We are trying to get hold of Mr. Farah Shaukat Ali as well, to first give you a briefing of what has happened in the country for the past 3 days, where he has not been on the program. We are going to talk to him to get his perspectives on the political situation here as well. And we are going to talk to the High Commissioner of Malaysia, Mr. AJM Musammil, former Mayor of Colombo, to get an insight about the political changes in Malaysia and how he thinks it will affect us as Sri Lankans. So I'm going to make sure I'll keep you updated with all of this. We are going to first get Faraz on the line. Now, as I've been telling you, Mahathir Mohamad has been, he was born in, he became a parliamentarian in the year 1964. He served one term before losing his seat, subsequently falling out with Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman and being expelled from his party in the UMNO. Now, when Abdul Rahman resigned, Mahathir re-entered this party and was promoted to the cabinet, and by 1976 had risen to Deputy Prime Minister, and in 1981 was sworn in as the Prime Minister after the resignation of his predecessor Hussein. Now, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad has been holding the prime ministerial position from 1981 until 2003. He has gone down in history as the person to hold that office for that particular, the longest tenure of time. Now, at the age of 92, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad has come again, resurfaced into the political scene as the Prime Minister after contesting from the opposition. Now, when Mahathir was born at his parents' wooden Malay house in Kedah, British Malaya, on the 10th of July, as the youngest of 9 siblings in the family, was nicknamed Sekdet. Mahathir's birth certificate gives his date of birth as 20th of December. He was actually born on the 10th of July. His biographer Barry Wayne explains that 20th December was an arbitrary date. Mahathir's grandfather was married to a person from Johor, so that is how the date of birth had to go away. But I told you we are going to talk to the Malaysian High Commissioner about the situation in Malaysia and how he thinks it will impact us as a country, these political changes that is happening around us. But I also told you that we are going to talk to Mr. Farah Shaukat Ali, the original host of the Newsline program, to get an insight and in-depth analysis of what's been happening in our country as well as these new political developments across the world. I have Mr. Farah Shaukat Ali on the line with me right now. Farah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Faraz, now I'm seated at your seat in the Studio 3 of News First, and I'm hosting the
Very
News
good
Live
morning
program.
to you, Chaturanga.
Good morning to you, Faraz. There is a little delay, I think, in the phone line. But Faraz, now a lot has been happening in the country for the past 3 days. The past 3 days that you were enjoying a little holiday and having a little system of upgrade, if I may put it that way. What do you reckon? The Judicial Bill has come about. The Parliament has given its green light. The National Audit Bill has been given the green light by the Supreme Court. With all of this happening, what do you have to say?
Well, these are all, on the face of it, they are all good items to happen, and it should happen, and it helps democracy in the long run. However, in between all this, we have to understand that there are various issues that crop up because either by design or by omission, things have been left out or there is some ambiguity. Now, for example, in terms of the Judicial Bill and so on, we noticed that very recently that the Cabinet has approved a 9-month extension of service to the Chief of the FCID. Well, that may well be good. However, what we must not forget is that several months ago, the Ministry of Law and Order ordered the FCID to send a whole lot of files to the what is called the National Procurement Commission after they had been investigated for quite a while by the FCID.
Yes.
So, having sent those files there, the bulk of these files, we, the public, have heard nothing thereafter. And now we see that the FCID chief's tenure is being, on the one side, being extended by the Cabinet of Ministers, and that the IGP has made a remark under section what they call 212, in which they say that he can't be given an extension because of some allegations. These allegations are, as we understand it, unsubstantiated. But what this all means, Chaturanga, is that it appears to us that the FCID is being systematically dismantled, and there is no. What was the purpose of having this whole thing? There are people who come to the FCID and go, and they have mini tamashas outside, and they knock the FCID after being questioned for several hours. There are cars parked outside the FCID, which is supposed to be evidence, but there is no action, and there is that is the problem. When we have this new Judicial Bill and special courts to be set up and so on, we are missing the action. Why is there such a delay? And why is it that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Law and Order, what's happened to those cases that the National Procurement Commission have been sent by the FCID? We've heard nothing. It's quietly eroding away. It's slipping away from our fingers. Those are the concerns.
Faraz, now when you say that there is a systematic dismantling of the FCID, I'm trying to understand what you're saying here. Do you mean to say that the very people that put the FCID in place or got the FCID running and got the system in place are trying to maybe dissolve the FCID? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, Chaturanga, the facts speak for themselves. When this government came into power, the FCID was in the news every blessed day. I'm sure that our news team were covering the Carville Place location, the initial location of the FCID, almost daily. And there were all sorts of people who turned up there. in one instance, the former secretary to the former president, I believe he's been questioned by the FCID over 35 times. And yet, we have yet to see any charges coming forth. Of course, we have seen smaller matters where people are being remanded, like the case of Sajin Vaskunawardena and so on. But really, did we set up the FCID just to go after people who misused a vehicle? Or is there something more that we wanted? This country wanted accountability and responsibility. And it appears that the FCID has served a political purpose, and now it is being quietly dismantled. That's how we view it.
Faraz, now, sorry. Now, Faraz, we've seen a promise that was made by the Good Governance government in its manifestos was the introduction of the National Audit Bill. It has gone into cabinet more than 25 times, and then it has finally gone with several amendments. It has gone to the Supreme Court, and it was at that stage. Now, yesterday, the second day after this Parliament was reconvened, second session of the Parliament, we got to know that the Cabinet has, or rather the Supreme Court has given the green light and said that it is in accordance, the National Audit Bill is in accordance with the Constitution of the country. A bit too late, isn't it? But isn't this a step towards the right side?
Definitely, you said you said it. You used the right word there. A little bit too late, but it's a step in the right direction. So let's get on with it. Let's respect the Supreme Court of our country, and let's get on with it. And let's fully implement that, because one of the key problems of this government has been one of acute procrastination. They started their life off on good governance by blaming the other side, and this went on for several years, nearly 3 years. And in the meantime, this country hasn't moved forward. It has just been stagnant, and that is very evident when we look at the fiscal mismanagement of our country. Our overall national debt has grown by 3 trillion rupees. Now that's at the rate of, if you think that this government has been in power for just about approximately 1,000 days, you're talking about 3 billion rupees per day for every 24 hours that they've been in power. Unfortunately, whether Dr. Indrajit Kumarasamy likes it or not, those are the figures, and we've obtained these figures from the central bank themselves. I remember you looking through those papers yourself. Now, we've seen the rupee dollar rate move. It's absolutely incredible, from 130 to nearly 160. Yeah. And they say that our borrowings are in dollars, our repayments are in dollars, and that they're paying it from reserves. Well, there is no fairy godmother who's filling in the reserves with dollars. We have to buy dollars. And how do we buy dollars? What currency do we use to buy dollars? Either you have to export or you have to bring in huge FDIs into the country, but every single FDI of any substance has been marred with controversy. We had the Volkswagen scenario, and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit pedantic for the governor to say that, we are paying, borrowing in dollars and repaying in dollars. How do you value the reserves then? On which currency do we use to value the reserves?
Faraz, now another interesting factor is that an 18 billion supplementary estimate for government expenditure was passed in Parliament yesterday. We also know the number of things that affect the general public that was increased. Milk powder, gas price, all of this has been increased, and on the other side, the government expenditure is also increasing. Now, we all know that the IMF has set out certain conditions for the loans that they are giving to the country, and cutting down government expenditure is one of the key factors. But if we see what has been happening, there have been several supplementary estimates that have been coming forward, and this time around, yesterday in fact, the value of the supplementary estimate was about 18 billion. So people are losing money, and what is happening economically?
What is happening very simply is that, as usual, the public, the Joe public, is being forced to pay for the mismanagement by government. And at the end of the day, the common man has got less, in real terms, less money left over once he gets his salary, because everything is going up and up.
Yeah.
And there seems to be no end in sight. And yet our legislators and so on, they hire top-end buildings, they have top-end vehicles, they have virtually unlimited fuel bills, and they seem to be divorced from reality. They don't seem to have their ear to the ground. No wonder that the last local polls, which was like a referendum really, no wonder it was a protest vote against this government.
Faraz, you have to give us a second over here, and we have to go into a short commercial break right now. But when we come back, as promised, we are going to talk to you about the new Prime Minister of Malaysia, 92-year-old Mahathir Mohamad. Stay with us, you are watching Newsline. Welcome back to the show. Now, we've been telling you that we are going to cross over to Malaysia to talk to the High Commissioner of Colombo. Several things to ask him, of course. We have to ask him about the reappointment or the appointment of the Prime Minister of Malaysia, and of course what happened to the 131 Sri Lankans that were found on board a ship that was apprehended, and those people were arrested by the Malaysian authorities for trying to cross over to Australia and New Zealand about a week back. We have to ask him about those as well. Now, what Faraz has been mentioning is that they are trying to cripple the FCID, the people are losing out money, and the politicians of the country do not seem to be doing anything about it. We've spoken to a few guests on this show for the past week, and I've made it a point to ask all of them, do you think that what the Parliament of Sri Lanka is doing and how the politicians, the public representatives of this country are acting out, will there be a change to the system where people actually get what they want and get a solution to the problems they face? But however, over the time, we have seen that the number of protests happening in our country have increased. Right now, as we speak, the CEB is conducting a work to rule campaign where they limit their work hours and only do what they're supposed to do and not do what is extra. Then there's a situation where the railway employees were supposed to have strike action yesterday starting from 12 noon. Then they had discussions with the Cabinet of Ministers. After the Cabinet of Ministers agreed to provide the solutions to their problems, they called off the strike action that was planned. We saw, as I mentioned earlier on, we saw the IUSF, the Inter-University Students' Federation, coming to the streets yesterday, tear gas and water cannons being used to disperse the protesters. All of this is happening in our country, and the people seem to be agitated about what's going on. But when it comes to the politicians, we do not see them actually taking any notice and actually trying to do what they are supposed to do, that is to govern the country. Now, like the politicians, we cannot break promises, so we are going to now cross over to Malaysia. The High Commissioner of Malaysia, His Excellency AJ Musammil. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Musammil, at the outset, let me ask you, thank you very much for joining us over the phone to talk about the developments in Malaysia. At the outset, let me ask you, before we go to the good news, let me ask you about the 131 Sri Lankans that were found on board a ship seized and arrested by the officials, the Royal Malaysian Police. What is the update there, Mr. Musammil?
Actually, that we have sent our officers, and we found that there have been a planned human trafficking to New Zealand. This is an arranged one, and Malaysian authorities have intercepted them, out of which 131, there are about 43 of them are holding UNHCR identity card, and the rest of them are holding Sri Lankan passport holders. So we are unable to reach them until the 14th. They will be in the detention camp in Johor. What we are trying to do is we are dealing with the Malaysian Royal Police Investigation Unit to ascertain further information, and we will be visiting those detainees on the 14th, that's next Monday probably, to find out further investigation. But these are all, I feel that our hands are quite tight. I am trying to get information, advice from the Foreign Office as to what we can do, but it's quite very little. So we will meet and find out. They are all travel from Sri Lanka to Singapore, and via Singapore they have been traveling to Johor Bahru by road. So these are some of the information we have, and further we are following up on these matters.
Mr. Muzammil, now we know that the new Prime Minister, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad, has won the election, and as the High Commissioner from our country, how do you think this will impact us as a nation and the relationship we have?
I couldn't get you clearly. What do you want? What's the question, please?
Mr. Muzammil, I'm trying to figure out how the appointment of the new Prime Minister, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad, will have an impact on countries that are around Malaysia, countries like Sri Lanka, the trade relationships. How will there be a change? Will there be an impact?
Hello? Yeah. 1 minute. Hello?
Mr. Muzammil?
I think you have to, because there was another disturbance. Can you return?
Sure, Mr. Muzammil. I'm trying to ask you whether there will be an impact or a change in the relationship that we have with Malaysia after the appointment of the new Prime Minister, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad.
Certainly not. Actually, during our president's visit in December 2016, when President Mahathir Mohamad visited Malaysia, he got Dr. Mahathir Mohamad to a courtesy call, and I believe Mahathir Mohamad, our president, always believed that there is a possibility of a slight chance of Dr. Mahathir coming in. So our president had a good relationship, and when I assumed office in Malaysia, he personally wanted to meet him and give extended greetings and made a courtesy call, so which I did. And his relationship with Sri Lanka is absolutely fine. I'm sure this change of government in Malaysia will not have any impact, and it will further enhance our relationship with Malaysia.
Mr. Muzammil, now how are the people of Malaysia taking on this appointment of the new Prime Minister?
No, it was a tough going, and many people shocked to hear these election results. But it was a very silent voting revolution, I would say. I say that the Malays, particularly the Malay community, who are very much supportive of Barisan Nasional, which is the UMNO is the major partner of the Barisan Nasional, which was led by Najib, by former Prime Minister Najib. So he was banking on the Malay votes. Unfortunately, that did not work, because I felt that the Malays wanted a change. And also the Malaysian Indian Congress, which was a partner of Barisan Nasional, even the leader, Dr. Subramaniam, lost his constituency. So the Tamil community, even the Chinese party which was supporting Barisan Nasional, the leader himself lost. So all round, the Malays, and the Tamil community, and the Chinese, they all seem to have very silently supported a very silent revolution, I must say, because this was not much expected by the rulers.
Mr. Muzammil, finally I want to ask you now, there is a trend in the world to say that politicians or heads of states and people who are public representatives should be young. But when you take the case of Mr. Mahathir Mohamad, he was 92 years old, a lot of experience and all of that. But when you look at the political history, do you think a person of this age can actually do well for the public?
Well, of course, he has a vast experience, and he's still quite healthy and good-looking. And I met him the last I met him was the 1st of January 2018. I met him while he was having lunch at a restaurant in Bukit Bintang, but I found that he was quite healthy. But of course, at this age, he will may be able to manage, and with his experience, he should be able to guide a good team to rule this country.
Mr. Muzammil, thank you very much for joining us from Malaysia early in the morning and talking to us about the developments in Malaysia.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you, sir, and we'll call you as well once again to find out what's happening to these 131 Sri Lankans who have been arrested by the Malaysian Royal Police, to find out their updates as well. Now, as promised to our viewers, we spoke to the High Commissioner of Malaysia, Sri Lankan High Commissioner to Malaysia, and we also took you through what's happening in our country in terms of our parliament, in terms of the protests that are being carried out in the country, and in terms of the bills and the acts that have been passed in parliament, as well as a supplementary estimate of 18 billion that was passed for government expenditure. Now, we also have to keep in mind that our news bulletins will keep you updated throughout the day as to what is happening in the country. Tomorrow we'll get an interesting guest and join you same place, same time. So thank you very much for watching Newsline this morning. I've been Saturang Hapuarachi. Have a good day.